If life had a cruel sense of humor, mine was the punchline. I never thought I would end up standing in front of her again. Not after years of silence, not after the way we tore each other apart. And yet here I was, clutching my cheap leather bag like a lifeline, about to work for the woman who had once been the most important person in my world. Her name was Avery Monroe. Once just Avery, my roommate, my partner in crime, my late-night confidant in our cramped college dorm. And now? She was Avery Monroe, the celebrated photographer, the name that appeared on glossy magazine covers, the name people whispered in admiration at New York art galleries. She had become everything we used to dream about, and I had become the girl still trying to piece her life together. I never thought I'd see her again, but when the offer came me a temporary assistant position at her studio, I didn't hesitate. Desperation does that to you. My rent was 2 months overdue, and my bank account looked like a bad joke. But it wasn't just about survival. Deep down, I think I wanted to know if she remembered me at all. If the Avery who once held my hand on cold nights still existed beneath the layers of fame and success. The studio door loomed in front of me, black steel with her name etched elegantly on a brass plaque. My heart pounded like I was about to walk into an execution chamber. I raised my hand to knock, but the door swung open before I could touch it. And there she was. Avery. She looked different, sharper somehow. Her cheekbones were more defined, her clothes effortlessly stylish in a way that screamed confidence. But her eyes, those hazel eyes that used to look at me like I was the only thing that mattered, still held the same depth. For a second, I thought I saw surprise flicker across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the kind of polite detachment people wear like armor. "You're late," she said, her voice cool, professional. Not a trace of the Avery who once whispered secrets into my ear under starlit skies. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. Traffic. New York always has traffic. Her lips curved not in amusement, but in that biting sarcasm I remembered too well. "Come in." I stepped inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and camera film filling my senses. The walls were covered with photographs, her photographs. Portraits of strangers with eyes that told stories. Landscapes captured like living poems. It was breathtaking and painful, because I remembered when she used to dream about these shots before they even existed. Working under Avery was like dancing on broken glass. She demanded perfection, barked instructions without warmth, and treated me as if I were just another disposable assistant. Yet there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when her mask cracked, when her gaze lingered on me longer than necessary, when her hand brushed mine as she handed me a lens, and the contact felt like electricity. The past hung between us like a ghost neither of us dared to name. One late evening, after hours of silence filled only with the clicking of her camera, she finally spoke. "Why did you take this job, Harper?" Her voice was quiet, almost too soft to hear. I froze. She hadn't called me by my name since college. "Because I needed work," I said, choosing the safe answer. Her camera lowered, and her eyes locked on mine. "Out of all the places in New York, you chose here?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I never stopped thinking about her, that every relationship I'd tried since had been nothing more than a shadow of what we had. But the words stuck in my throat, heavy and dangerous. So instead I shrugged. Maybe I just missed photography. Avery studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned back to her camera, shutting the door between us once again. But the truth was I had missed her. More than photography, more than anything. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between us only grew sharper. The studio became a battlefield of unspoken words. Some days she was cold and distant, treating me like an intern who barely existed. Other days her gaze softened, and for a fleeting heartbeat, I saw the Avery I once knew. One night, after a particularly grueling shoot, I found her sitting alone on the studio floor, surrounded by prints. Her hair was undone, falling messily around her face. She looked human again, vulnerable. I hesitated at the doorway, then stepped closer. "You okay?" She glanced up, and for once there was no sarcasm in her voice. "Do you ever wonder how we ended up here?" The question hit me like a sucker punch. I sat down beside her, careful not to touch. "All the time." Her lips curved into something fragile, almost a smile. "We were supposed to conquer the world together. You and me. Remember?" I remembered. God, I remembered everything. The nights we stayed up until dawn, planning our futures. The way she kissed me once, just once, when we were too drunk to be afraid, and how the next day she pretended it never happened. Things change, I whispered. Avery looked at me, then really looked at me. Her eyes glistened in the dim light. Do they? The silence between us was deafening. My heart screamed for me to bridge the distance, to reach out and hold her like I used to. But fear wrapped its fingers around my chest and I stayed still. In that moment I realized the truth. I hadn't just come here for a job. I had come here for her. To find out if the girl I once loved still existed inside the woman sitting next to me. But love is never that simple. Because secrets have a way of catching up to you. And there were things between us, things I didn't yet know, that would threaten to tear us apart all over again. The silence that night lingered long after I left the studio. Walking down the dimly lit streets of Brooklyn, I replayed Avery's words over and over again. Do they? I hated how easily she could shatter my carefully built defenses with just 2 syllables. She always had that power over me back then, and apparently still now. The next morning I arrived earlier than usual, determined to prove to myself that I could keep things professional. But professionalism dissolved the moment I stepped inside and saw Avery perched on the edge of a stool, staring at a contact sheet like it was a confession. Her eyes flicked up when she heard me. Coffee? She asked abruptly. I blinked. What? I usually ask my assistants to get coffee before we start. Black, 2 sugars. Her tone was clipped, as though she was reminding herself that I was not Harper the girl she used to know, but Harper the assistant. I bit back the sting. Got it. When I returned 10 minutes later, balancing 2 cups, I caught her watching me with a softness she quickly smothered beneath indifference. She took her cup without a thank you, sipping slowly before diving back into work. It was always like that, push and pull, warmth and frost. By the end of the week, we were preparing for a high-profile shoot with Vogue. The studio buzzed with stylists, models, and assistants. Avery was in her element, commanding, brilliant, untouchable. I couldn't help but admire her, even as my heart ached from the distance she insisted on keeping. Harper, light meter, she called, not even glancing at me. I handed it over, brushing her fingers by accident. Electricity. A flash of the past. She froze, her eyes darting to mine, but only for a second before she turned away. Later, when the shoot wrapped and the chaos subsided, I found her alone again, sitting cross-legged on the studio floor with her camera. Her walls always crumbled after the crowd left. You were amazing today, I said quietly, surprising myself. She looked up, skepticism in her gaze. You always did know how to flatter. It's not flattery if it's true. Her lips pressed together, and for the first time I thought she might actually smile. But instead she asked, Do you remember the last photo I took of you? I froze. Of course I remembered. It was during senior year on the roof of our dorm. She'd begged me to sit still while she captured the city lights reflected in my eyes. She called it the beginning. I never asked what she meant. I remember, I whispered. Her eyes softened, but then she snapped the camera shut and stood. Forget it. Go home, Harper. We have another shoot at dawn. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and ask why she kept pulling me close only to shove me away. But I didn't. Instead, I left, carrying the weight of her unspoken words like a stone in my chest. 2 weeks later, everything broke open. We had just finished a shoot in Central Park, the autumn leaves painting the world in fiery colors. I was packing up equipment when a familiar voice drifted over. Avery Monroe. I'll be damned. I turned to see a tall man in his 30s approaching, his grin wide, his eyes glinting with recognition. Avery stiffened beside me. Ethan, she said flatly. He laughed, ignoring the iciness in her tone. Still as sharp as ever. And who's this? His gaze flicked to me, lingering just a moment too long. This is my assistant, Avery replied before I could speak. Harper. Ethan raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Assistant, huh? Funny, I thought you two used to be close. The tension crackled like static. My stomach twisted. Who was this man and how did he know about us? Avery's jaw tightened. People change. Ethan smirked, clearly enjoying the discomfort. Sure, people change. But some things, they don't disappear. He winked at me, then strolled away, leaving behind a silence so heavy it nearly crushed me. I turned to Avery, heart pounding. Who the hell was that? Her eyes were sharp as glass. No one. No one doesn't look at me like that. My voice trembled despite my best efforts. What's going on, Avery? She grabbed the equipment bag, her movements clipped. Drop it, Harper. No, I snapped louder than intended. The park was empty except for us, but my voice still felt like it echoed. I've been pretending I can do this, that I can just be your assistant and nothing else. But then he shows up, hinting at things I don't understand. You don't need to understand. She cut me off, spinning around. For the first time, her mask cracked wide open. Her eyes blazed with something between anger and desperation. You left, Harper. You walked away, and you don't get to come back and demand answers. The words hit me like a slap. I left? Are you kidding me? You were the one who shut me out, who pretended nothing happened between us. Her face paled, but her voice was steel. We were kids. Drunk. Confused. It didn't mean anything. It was the cruelest thing she could have said. My throat closed, tears stinging my eyes. Don't you dare. Don't you dare tell me it didn't mean anything. That night was the realest thing I've ever felt. Her breath hitched, and for a split second pain flashed across her face. Then she turned away, her shoulders rigid. Go home, Harper. I stood there, shaking, every nerve in my body screaming to reach for her. But I didn't. I picked up my bag and walked away, my vision blurred with tears. For 3 days I didn't hear from her. I considered quitting, drafting the email a dozen times, but something stopped me each time. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe hope. On the 4th day I got a text. Studio. 7 p.m. Don't be late. When I arrived, the studio was dark except for a single lamp in the corner. Avery sat on the floor, a bottle of whiskey between her knees, photographs scattered around her like fallen leaves. You came, she said, her voice raw. You told me to. She laughed bitterly, taking a swig. You always did follow directions. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my voice. Why am I here, Avery? Her gaze lifted to mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. Because I can't do this anymore. The pretending. The walls. I can't. My heart pounded. Then stop. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. It's not that simple. Why not? Silence stretched. Finally she whispered. Because I ruined everything once. And I'm terrified I'll do it again. I sank to the floor beside her, my knees brushing hers. You didn't ruin anything. You just got scared. Her eyes open, glistening with tears. You don't know the whole story. Then tell me, I pleaded. For a long moment she just stared at me, like she was weighing whether the truth would set us free or destroy us completely. Then finally she whispered. Back in college. The reason I pushed you away wasn't because I didn't feel the same. It was because I felt too much. And I was terrified someone would find out. My family, my sponsors, the people who were supposed to invest in my career. Being gay wasn't an option for me, Harper. It meant losing everything. Her confession knocked the air out of me. You broke my heart to protect your career, I said slowly. Her tears fell silently. Yes. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream and tell her how much she'd hurt me. But instead all I felt was this aching tenderness because the truth was I understood. Fear had ruled my life too in ways I didn't like to admit. Without thinking I reached for her hand. She flinched but didn't pull away. Avery, I whispered. I don't care about the world. I just care about us. She looked at me then. Really looked like she was searching for something in my face. Whatever she found made her exhale a trembling breath. Her hand tightened around mine. And for the first time in years it felt like the walls between us began to crumble. Her hand in mine felt like a lifeline, fragile and trembling but real. I was afraid to move, afraid to breathe, terrified that if I did, the moment would vanish like smoke. But then Avery pulled her hand back, wiping at her eyes like she hated herself for breaking down. This doesn't change anything, she whispered. Yes, it does. My voice was firmer than I expected. You told me the truth. That changes everything. She shook her head, staring at the whiskey bottle as if it held answers. You don't understand, Harper. People don't forgive. They don't forget. If anyone finds out, then let them, I cut in. My pulse was racing, but I didn't care. What's the point of being this successful if you're miserable? She gave a bitter laugh. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. Her gaze lingered on me, torn, before she stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. You think you know what's at stake? You don't. My career isn't just my nights tied to investors, contracts, galleries. If they turn on me, I lose everything I built. Everything I bled for. I stood too, my chest tight. And what about me? What about what we had? Did you ever think about what I lost when you shut me out? The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharp with years of buried pain. Avery froze, her back to me. When she finally turned, her face was pale, her voice hoarse. I think about it every damn day. Silence crashed between us, heavier than any scream. For the first time in years, I believed her. The following weeks blurred into a fragile rhythm. We worked side by side during the day, Avery hiding behind her usual armor, me pretending not to notice. But at night, there were cracked small moments when her gaze softened, when her laughter slipped out unguarded, when her hand brushed mine just long enough to make my heart ache. I should have been relieved. Instead, I was terrified. Because the closer we grew, the more dangerous it felt. And then Ethan returned. It was at a gallery opening in Soho. Avery's photographs displayed across white walls, critics and collectors buzzing around with champagne flutes. I wore a borrowed dress, awkward and out of place, while Avery glided through the crowd like a queen. Then I saw him, Ethan, leaning casually against the bar, his grin curling like smoke. Harper, right? He said smoothly when he caught my eye. Assistant extraordinaire. I stiffened. What do you want? He sipped his drink, eyes glinting. Relax. I'm just here to enjoy the art. Beautiful work, isn't it? So much passion behind the lens. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Funny how some passions don't make it to the gallery wall. My skin crawled. What are you implying? Nothing, he said lightly. Yet. His gaze flicked toward Avery across the room, then back to me. But secrets have a funny way of coming out, especially when people like me are holding them. I clenched my fists, rage simmering. Stay away from her. He chuckled, unbothered. You think you can protect her? Sweetheart, Avery's playing in a league where the truth is currency. And trust me, everyone has a price. Before I could respond, Avery appeared, her expression icy. Ethan. Always a pleasure, Monroe, he drawled. Then he winked at me and melted into the crowd, leaving behind the sour taste of threat. Avery's jaw was tight. What did he say to you? I hesitated, then lied. Nothing important. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't push. Instead, she grabbed my hand right there, in the middle of the gallery, and pulled me toward the exit. We ended up on the roof of the building, the city sprawling out beneath us, glittering and alive. Avery paced like she couldn't breathe. He's dangerous, she muttered. He knows things. About us. I asked carefully. Her silence was answer enough. I swallowed hard. So what if he does? Let him talk. Her eyes snapped to mine, blazing with panic. You don't get it. One rumor, one article, and everything I've built collapses. I've seen it happen. Careers destroyed overnight. I can't risk it, Harper. And what about risking me? My voice cracked. What about us? Are you really going to keep living in fear while he holds this over you? She flinched like I'd struck her. For a moment I thought she'd walk away. Instead she whispered, I don't know how to do this. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. Then let me show you. Her breath hitched as our eyes locked, the city humming beneath us. The distance between us felt unbearable. And then finally, after all the years, all the walls, all the silence, she kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, bruising, a confession carved into the space between us. My hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around me like she was afraid I'd vanish. The world tilted, and for one perfect, impossible moment it was just us again. When we finally broke apart, her forehead rested against mine, both of us gasping for air. This is dangerous, she whispered. So is breathing, I murmured back. But we still do it. Her laugh was shaky, broken. But it was real. The days that followed felt like stolen time. We fell into a secret rhythm, professional distance by day, fragile intimacy by night. She cooked us pasta in her loft one evening, the smell of garlic and wine filling the air, her laughter softer than I'd heard in years. Another night, we walked along the East River, her hand brushing mine under the cover of darkness. For the first time, I felt hope. But shadows don't disappear just because you close your eyes. One afternoon, I came into the studio to find Avery standing rigid, a newspaper in her hands. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. "What is it?" I asked, dread curling in my gut. She held it out, her hands trembling. Famed photographer Avery Monroe seen leaving gallery with mystery woman. My stomach dropped. The photo wasn't clear, but it was Usher dragging me out of the gallery, our hands clasped tight. "Avery," she cut me off, voice sharp with panic. "We can't be seen together like this. Not again." Her words sliced me open. "Not again." She froze, realizing too late what she'd said. My chest tightened. "What aren't you telling me?" Her silence was deafening. And in that moment, I knew there was more to the past than she'd confessed. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my tiny apartment floor, staring at the grainy photo on my phone, my mind spinning. Avery wasn't just afraid of rumors, she was haunted by something deeper. Something she hadn't told me. And if I was going to fight for us, I needed to know what it was. But the question that gnawed at me was this. When I finally uncovered the truth, would it bring us closer together? Or break us apart for good? The photo spread like wildfire. Within days, whispers slithered through every corner of the industry. Who was the mystery woman? Was Avery Monroe hiding something? The air felt heavier each time we walked into the studio. The silence between us stretched thin and brittle. But what gutted me most wasn't the tabloids. It was Avery. She shut down again, walls higher, voice clipped, eyes refusing to meet mine. The warmth we'd stolen on the rooftop, the fragile laughter in her loft, the way she kissed me like she couldn't breathe without might, all vanished behind her armor. One night I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed into the studio long after midnight, finding her hunched over prints, shoulders bowed like the weight of the world was grinding her down. "You don't get to do this," I said, my voice trembling but firm. She looked up, startled. "Do what?" "Shut me out. Pretend none of it happened. You kissed me, Avery. You told me the truth. You don't get to rip it all away because you're scared." Her hands clenched. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand." I exploded, the years of silence finally boiling over. "Stop treating me like a stranger. Stop hiding. What really happened back then? What are you so afraid of?" Her face twisted with pain, and for a long, awful moment I thought she'd tell me to leave. But instead she whispered, "I was outed once before." The room spun. "What?" Her voice cracked. "Sophomore year. Before you and I. Before that night on the roof. I was careless. Someone found out about a girl I was seeing. It spread like wildfire through campus. My parents threatened to cut me off, professors looked at me differently, sponsors pulled out of a scholarship. I lost everything I'd been building. I swore it would never happen again." My chest ached. "And then you met me." She nodded, tears glistening. "And suddenly I wanted it all again. With you. But I couldn't risk it, Harper. Loving you meant risking the only future I had left. So I lied. I said it didn't mean anything because if I admitted the truth, I'd lose everything all over again." Her words carved through me, grief, anger, and love colliding in my veins. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. "Do you know what it did to me, Avery? Hearing you say it meant nothing? It broke me. I spent years thinking I was a mistake you wanted to forget." Her tears spilled. "You were never a mistake. You were the only thing that ever felt real." The silence that followed was sharp and raw. Then, without thinking, I closed the distance and pulled her into my arms. She clung to me like she was drowning, sobs shaking her frame. For the first time, she let me carry some of her weight. The days after her confession were fragile but different. Avery was still cautious, still skittish, but she stopped pretending. Late nights in the studio turned into quiet talks, her head resting on my shoulder, her walls cracking open piece by piece. But the outside world wasn't kind. Ethan struck again, this time with venom. A gossip column appeared, full of insinuations, framing Avery as reckless and secretive, hinting at relationships she was hiding. Clients began calling, investors pulling out. The empire she had built with her own blood and sweat was slipping. I expected her to crumble. Instead, Avery did something I never imagined. She fought back. I'm tired of letting other people write my story, she told me one night, her eyes blazing. If they want to know the truth, then I'll give it to them. On my terms. What are you saying? I whispered. She reached for my hand, steady for once. I'm saying I don't want to hide anymore. Not from them. Not from you. Not from myself. The press conference was brutal. Cameras flashed, reporters barked questions, the air thick with bloodlust. Avery stood tall at the podium, her hand steady even though I knew her heart was racing. I've spent my career telling stories through photographs, she began. But I've hidden my own story for far too long. Yes, I am gay. Yes, I have loved and I am still capable of love. If that makes me unmarketable, so be it. But I refuse to apologize for being who I am. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Questions exploded, but Avery didn't flinch. She looked directly into the cameras, her eyes fierce. And to those who want to use my truth against me, know this. I will no longer live in fear. When she stepped away, my chest ached with pride. She had done it, had chosen herself, chosen us. Of course, the backlash came swift and merciless. Some clients pulled their contracts. Online trolls crawled out of the woodwork. But amid the chaos, something else happened too. Messages poured in from young artists, queer kids, fans who finally saw themselves reflected in someone they admired. Avery had lost some of her empire, but she had gained something far greater, freedom. Our relationship wasn't magically fixed overnight. We still argued, still carried scars too deep to vanish in a single gesture. But slowly we learned how to rebuild. We cooked dinner together in her loft, burning garlic bread and laughing until tears spilled. We walked through Central Park in the snow, fingers entwined in plain sight, daring the world to look. We revisited the roof of our old dorm one night, staring out at the city lights like we had all those years ago. This time she kissed me without fear. I wasted so much time, she whispered against my lips. We have time now, I murmured back. And for the first time I believed it. Months later, her career began to steady again, not as flashy, not as gilded with the same investors, but truer, stronger. She curated an exhibition called Unhidden, a collection of portraits that captured people in their rawest selves. At the center of the gallery, framed in soft light, was the photograph she had taken of me on the dorm roof years ago, the beginning. I stared at it, tears stinging my eyes. You kept it, I whispered. Avery slid her arm around my waist. I never stopped seeing you as the beginning of everything. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers and art and the city that had once swallowed us whole, I realized we had finally found our way back, not to the past, but to a future we'd been too afraid to claim. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was ours. And that was enough. Years from now, when people asked Avery Monroe about her greatest work, she didn't point to the magazine covers or the awards. She pointed to Unhidden. And when people asked me about the bravest thing I'd ever done, I didn't talk about standing by her side through scandal and chaos. I said it was this, walking back into her studio that first day, even when every part of me wanted to run. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself love again. And I did. With her. Always with her. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.